The call came on a Tuesday morning. Detective Fielding said Dana's name the way you say something fragile. Careful, deliberate, like she was deciding how hard to set it down. Dana's hand tightened on the phone. Mia Tran was 6 years old. She had been missing for 18 hours. And 31 days earlier, Dana Mercer had signed her case closed. Have you ever been completely certain you did everything right, and then had to wonder if someone paid for that certainty? Welcome to Strong Mind Stories. Character-driven stories with a twist you won't see coming, and an emotional truth you probably will. Hit that like button and subscribe if you want more. Let's get into it. Dana had worked 31 cases that quarter. She knew the Tran file the way she knew all of them, by its exceptions. Single mother, 2-bedroom rental near the rail yards, 1 child, a boyfriend who'd been in the picture about 8 months. The original complaint had come from a neighbor named Owen Price. He had harassment history with the family. Dana had gone in, spent 2 visits with Cora Tran, found the apartment clean, found Mia alert and well-fed and able to name her teachers. She'd asked about the boyfriend. Cora said he was fine. She asked Mia. Mia shrugged the way 6-year-olds shrug, and said he bought her ice cream sometimes. Dana had closed the case. Now she was sitting across from Detective Rosa Fielding in a diner 3 blocks from the agency office. And Fielding was laying out the timeline with the particular patience of someone who had decided to let the other person hear themselves. You closed on the 14th, Fielding said. Yes. Mia was reported missing yesterday morning. Cora says the boyfriend, Dale Cutler, left with her 2 days ago. Said he was taking her to a park, didn't come back. Dana kept her hands flat on the table. What do we know about Cutler? He worked logistics at a warehouse in the valley, quit 3 weeks ago. No forwarding address. Fielding looked at her coffee. We're also looking at the neighbor, Price. You know him from the file. He filed the original complaint. He was seen outside the Tran house the week before Mia disappeared. Can't account for his time. Fielding set her cup down. I'm not here to make your life hard, Dana. I'm here because you know this case better than anyone, and Mia has been gone for 40 hours. It was a reasonable thing to say. It was also not quite an absolution. Dana drove back to the office and pulled the Tran file. She read it front to back the way you read something you wrote a long time ago and are now afraid of. Everything was in order. Her notes were thorough. Her reasoning was documented. She had followed procedure. She called Cora Tran. Cora picked up on the second ring and said nothing for a moment. Then, I tried to tell you. Tell me what, Cora? That he wasn't okay. That something was wrong with how he looked at her. Her voice was flat, not angry, something past angry. I didn't know how to say it where it didn't sound like nothing. You told me he was fine. I know what I told you. A long pause. He was standing right there. Dana sat with that for a moment. I'm going to find her, Cora. Cora didn't answer that. She said she had to go and hung up. Owen Price lived in a 2-story rental with a chain-link fence and a truck in the driveway that hadn't moved in weeks. Dana knocked on his door that evening without calling ahead. She wasn't entirely sure what she was doing there. She told herself she was building context. What she was actually doing was looking for something to point at. Price answered in a gray t-shirt, already irritated. He recognized her from her visit to the Tran house. Figured one of you would show up, he said. Can I come in? No. He leaned against the frame. I already talked to the detective. I don't know where the kid is. I didn't take her. I'm not saying you did. You're standing on my porch at 7 in the evening. What are you saying? Dana looked at him steadily. He had the aggressive stillness of someone who'd been accused of things before and was tired of it. You filed the original complaint against the Tran family. Against the boyfriend, not the family. He crossed his arms. I filed it because he scared me. The way he was with that little girl. You people came out, knocked on the door, and then told me everything was fine, which it clearly wasn't. You were seen outside their house last week. Something crossed his face, not guilt, but frustration. The specific frustration of a man who knows exactly how he looks and can't do anything about it. I was keeping an eye on things, since nobody else was. That's not how this works, Mr. Price. How's it working out your way? He closed the door. On the drive home, Dana ran it back through her head. The prior harassment complaint, the surveillance, the inability to say where he'd been. She'd met men like Price before, fixated, convinced their version of events was the only real one. The detective was looking at him. It made sense to look at him, but Cora's voice stayed with her. He was standing right there. Dana got home. poured a glass of water, and stood at her kitchen window for a long time without drinking it. She went back to the file the next morning. She read her own notes again. Then she started reading the administrative subfolders, the parts of a case file that nobody reads once the case is closed. Intake logs, correspondence records, system entries. There was a gap between her second visit and the closure date, a 4-day window with no entries. That wasn't always unusual. But Dana was thorough. She always logged contact attempts. She always noted when there was nothing to note. She went to find Merritt. Alan Merritt had the corner office with the glass wall that looked out over the open floor. He was on the phone when Dana appeared at his door. He held up one finger, finished his call, and waved her in with the ease of a man who had never been surprised in his life. "Rough few days," he said. "I'm looking at the Tran file. There's a 4-day gap before closure. Cases have gaps, Dana, not mine." He looked at her for a moment. Then he smiled, not unkindly. "You're being too hard on yourself. The detective's office is handling this. Let them work." Cora Tran said she tried to tell me something during my visits, but the boyfriend was right there, which means she may have been trying to signal something I missed. If that's true, I want to understand how I missed it. Or, Merritt said, she's rewriting the past because her daughter is gone and she needs someone to blame. He leaned back in his chair. "You closed a clean case, Dana. Let Detective Fielding work the disappearance. That's her job." He said it the way he said everything. Calmly, reasonably, in a tone that made disagreement feel like overreaction. Dana went back to her desk. She thought about what he'd said. She thought about the 4-day gap. Then she thought about something else. Price had told her, "I called the office. I called twice. Nobody called me back." She searched the case management system for any logged contact from Owen Price after his initial complaint. There was nothing. She went back to Price. This time she called ahead. He met her at the door with the same guarded posture but opened it wider, which she took as something. "You said you called the office twice after the initial complaint." "That's right. What did you say when you called?" He looked at her. "I said Cutler was getting worse. I'd seen him grab that girl's arm in the parking lot. Hard enough that she cried. I said somebody needed to go back out there." "Do you remember who you spoke to?" "I didn't speak to anybody. It went to voicemail both times. A man's voice." Dana felt something go still in her chest. The caseworker voicemail line routed to individual workers. Dana's voicemail was her own recorded voice. If Price had reached a man's voicemail, he hadn't reached Dana's line. "Did you leave your name?" "Both times." There was no record of those calls in the system. Logging contact was mandatory. You could forget a lot of things in this job. You could not accidentally fail to log a contact from a complainant on an active case. She drove back to the office and walked past her own desk to the records room. She requested the full physical case file for Mia Tran, telling the clerk she needed it for her own documentation review. This was allowed. It was unusual. The clerk gave her a look and handed it over. Dana took it to a conference room and closed the door. Most of what was in the file duplicated the system: intake forms, visit logs, her own notes. But physical files also held administrative correspondence, things routed through the office rather than entered directly into the case management system. She found it in a manila subfolder behind a divider labeled Administrative, Non-Case. A printed email. The sender was the state intake line. The recipient was Alan Merritt. The date was 4 days before Dana closed the Tran case. It was a second complaint about the Tran household, filed by Cora Tran herself through the intake line. It described Dale Cutler. It described specific incidents. It used Mia's name. Merritt had printed it. He had placed it in a physical subfolder. He had not entered it into the case management system. He had not forwarded it to Dana. He had not flagged the case for review. Dana sat in that conference room for a long time. Then she took out her phone, photographed every page, and put the file back together exactly as she'd found it. She went to Merritt's office. He looked up from his desk and read her face, and for just a moment, less than a second, something moved behind his eyes. Then it was gone, and he was Alan Merritt again. "Close the door," he said. She closed it. "You buried Cora Tran's second complaint," Dana said. "She filed it 4 days before I closed the case. You received it, printed it, and filed it where it wouldn't generate a system timestamp. Then you let me close." "That's a serious accusation." "It's what happened." He was quiet. When he spoke, his voice was still level, but something in it had shifted, the way water changes when it gets close to a drain. "The quarterly numbers were under state review. We had 11 cases sitting past the 90-day window. Your work on Tran was thorough. One intake call from a mother who had already been assessed does not automatically trigger a reopening. I made a judgment call. She used her name. It wasn't anonymous. You made a judgment call and a 6-year-old girl is missing. Merritt stood up. He wasn't a large man, but he had the posture of someone who had never needed to be allowed to be threatening. You want to be careful here, Dana. The state investigator is reviewing your closure. I've already spoken with him. He paused. I told him you may have a personal stake in redirecting blame. I don't know what that means yet, but I think you do. The room was very quiet. Dana looked at him. She thought about the photograph on her phone. She thought about Cora Tran saying he was standing right there in a voice that had moved past anger into something that had no name. You should have forwarded that complaint, Dana said. She walked out. She sat in her car in the parking garage for 20 minutes. Merritt had just told her, as plainly as he could without saying it directly, that he knew something about her past. Which meant he'd looked. Or someone had told him. Or he was guessing and watching to see if she flinched. She had flinched. She knew she had. She opened her phone, not to call anyone. She did what she had done before, in other parking lots, in other quiet moments when the thing she'd buried tried to surface. She went to Sarah's profile. The most recent photo was 3 weeks old. Sarah at a kitchen table, laughing at something off camera, her baby daughter sitting on her lap. The baby had Sarah's eyes. Sarah had Dana's jaw, which Dana noticed every time and never knew what to do with. She looked at the photograph for a long time. Then she closed the app. She got out of the car. She went back inside. She called Detective Fielding from the stairwell. I have a printed email from the state intake line dated 4 days before I closed the Tran case. Cora Tran filed a second complaint naming Dale Cutler specifically. Merritt received it and buried it. She paused. I have photographs of the document. Fielding was quiet for a moment. Send them to me. I need you to understand something first. Merritt is going to make this about me. He's going to say I'm deflecting. He may have information about my background that he'll use. Fielding's voice was steady. Send me the photographs. Dana sent them. What happened next took 4 days. The state investigator presented with the photographs requested the physical file. The printed email was there. The absence of any corresponding system entry was there. Merritt's digital access logs showed he had opened Cora Tran's intake record 4 days before the case closed and generated no case actions. Merritt retained a lawyer. He stopped coming to the office. The investigation pivoted. Dale Cutler became the focus. His employment records, his phone, his car. A toll camera placed him on I-82 eastbound the night Mia disappeared. His wife Karen's name appeared in property records for a storage unit in Kennewick. Karen's sister lived in the Tri-Cities. On the 4th day, police knocked on the sister's door in Richland. Karen Cutler answered. She looked at the officers, and then looked at the floor, and said she had been trying to figure out what to do. She said Dale had told her Mia belonged to a coworker who needed help, that he was between housing, that the girl just needed somewhere safe for a few weeks. She said she hadn't asked too many questions because Mia was there, and Mia needed things and Karen had been glad to provide them. She said this the way someone says something they've rehearsed in order to stop feeling it. Mia was in the back bedroom watching cartoons. She was scared when the officers came in. Then a woman officer sat down on the floor next to her and talked to her quietly, and she became less scared. She asked for her mom. They called Cora. Dale Cutler was located at a gas station 2 miles away. He did not cooperate. Dana heard about Mia from Fielding, by phone, on a Wednesday afternoon. She was at her desk. She said thank you, hung up, and pressed both hands flat on the desk and looked at the wall. Mia Tran was going home. She had done that. She had stayed pointed at the right thing even when it cost her, and a 6-year-old girl was going home to her mother. She should have felt something clean. She almost did. The story broke publicly that evening. Local news first, then picked up statewide. A regional director who had suppressed a child welfare complaint to protect agency performance numbers, while a 6-year-old remained in danger. Dana's name appeared in the story briefly, as the caseworker who had uncovered the buried complaint. There were calls from people she hadn't spoken to in years. She didn't look at her phone until the next morning. By then, Sarah had posted. It wasn't long. It was measured in the way that things are measured when someone has been composing them privately for a long time, and has finally decided that the moment has come. She wrote that Dana Mercer was her mother, She wrote that Dana had left her in the Idaho foster system when she was 4 years old and had not come back. She wrote that she was sharing this not out of anger, though she had felt anger, but because she thought people deserved a full picture of who was being held up as someone who fights for children. She wrote that she had a daughter now, 8 months old, who would not know her grandmother, and that this was a choice she had made deliberately, and that she was at peace with it. She included the photograph, the one from the kitchen table, Sarah laughing, the baby on her lap. Dana read it 3 times. She did not call a lawyer. She did not post a response. She did not close the app and put the phone in a drawer the way she had done with every hard thing for the last 20 years. She read it a 4th time. Then she set the phone down on the kitchen table and sat there in the quiet of her apartment. No television, no radio, nothing to fill the space. And she let it be true. All of it. The parts Sarah had gotten exactly right, and the parts that were more complicated, and the part that was simply, irreducibly, unforgivably true. She had left. She had told herself she was too broken to be a mother, and she had left. And the truth underneath that truth, the one she had spent 15 years carpeting over with other people's children, was that leaving had been easier than staying. She thought about Merritt reading Cora's complaint and closing the drawer. She thought about Karen Cutler at the door, saying she hadn't wanted to ask too many questions. She thought about herself at 22, in a state office in Idaho, signing a piece of paper, and the specific and deliberate way she had not looked back. Outside, the city moved past her window. A train on the rail line. A car alarm somewhere. Going quiet. Mia Tran was home. Sarah's daughter would never know her grandmother. Both of these things were true, and Dana Mercer was going to have to live inside both of them. Finally, after 15 years without the wall she'd built to keep them apart. Thanks for listening. If you want more stories like this, subscribe.